Hi, so today we have the lovely Lalita Holmes, all the way from Tasmania. She's a neuroplasticity coach, and she's going to tell us all about how she recovered from years and years of CFS ME, and then had long COVID and has recovered from that too. So we want to know all about your story, everything that you've done, and how you help others. So, hi Lalita, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, Donna.
Oh,
Hi, it's lovely to see you, and thank you so much for having me and giving me this opportunity to share my story.
Oh, it's
Thank
lovely
you.
to have you here. So tell us, take us right back to the beginning, when you first became unwell all those years ago, and tell us a little bit about that.
Oh goodness, it's a long story, so I'll try and keep it short because it was a long time ago as well.
Yeah.
Right. So originally I was very ill with lupus, fibromyalgia, chronic pain. Um, I had mast cell issues, a lot of allergies, chemical sensitivities, ME/CFS. Yeah, loads of things. And back then, that was before internet.
Mm,
Okay, so a long time ago, and there wasn't as much information as there is now. Do you know,
mm,
you guys, you're so lucky now. You've got such a wealth of amazing information and education out there. We've come a long way, which is exciting.
yeah.
But back then, I had 17 years of chronic illness, autoimmune, constantly told that there was no cure. And honestly, no one should have to live like that. It was a hideous way to live. It wasn't living. I spent 11 of those years, mostly housebound and bedbound, crawling to the bathroom and back. And I had two young children at the time. It was really, really hard, incredibly hard.
Mm,
Um, but I eventually, and even though I was told there was no cure, I was determined to recover. I was determined to find a way to get well. So I didn't just stay quiet. I just kept looking and looking and trying every single thing that possibly I could find, and it wasn't easy back then because you couldn't just jump online and look for things. It was word of mouth, asking people, talking to people, who's around. Who's the homeopath, who's the naturopath, who's the breathwork person, who's doing what. So I went to down the functional medicine road first. I thought, yeah, I was going to get really fast because he used acupuncture. He was Ayurvedic trained. So I put everything on the line to see this person and to get well. But after thousands of dollars later, thousands of tests later, nothing, absolutely nothing. I had a little bit of relief from the pain with the acupuncture that he would do about every 10 days,
mm,
but no recovery, inside really.
mm,
And then it was just one after another, just trying everything you could imagine.
mm.
Really, really amazing
Yeah.
things that I tried to get while I was so determined. Um, and then eventually, yeah, you used a mind body process, which involved some EFT at the time. The the modality was faster EFT that I used, but it was actually the what I understand now, um, is just this mind body approach,
Mm,
and addressing the nervous system. So I recovered, and that was 14 years ago. So I've been really well for 14 years, really well. And of course, when I recovered, I went straight into learning how can I help other people. Other people are depressed when they're ill, like I was, suicidal, like I was. um, no hope. It's just a horrible, horrible place to be. And I felt like I could do something to help. So I went into counseling, I went into mental illness, drug and alcohol, kind of just started to learn as much as I could. But and I always felt like there was something missing when I went down that track because I could help people to a degree, but not really get to the root cause of their issues, which was this nervous system issue. Okay.
Mm.
And then of course I'm healthy and doing well and I'm working again. And COVID came along, and the first time I caught it, it was before vaccinations, before anything. Nobody even knew what this was.
Mm.
I'd been to a big conference where there was a lot of people and I can remember at the time there were a lot of people coughing and spluttering and not well. And of course, and I got sick. And I must admit, at the time, I probably was a bit run down. I was probably not at my best. Too many late nights and, a bit more stress than usual,
Mhm.
pushing myself maybe a little bit harder than I could have been. So, my body may have been a vulnerable host at the time. So that first time I was really sick, I was sick for about 6 weeks, very, very ill. Um, a lot of chest issues with coughing, breathing. So it took quite a while, but I recovered, and I just went on with life. But I started noticing some odd things that I hadn't before. Like, for example, and I only recently looked back to and realized that that's what was going on. At the time, I had no clue. So I went from always having low blood pressure
Mhm.
to suddenly having very high blood pressure.
Mhm.
And I thought, and I talked to my doctor about it, and he said, well, you're getting older and maybe you could do a little bit more exercise. But I don't know, something very strange was happening. Um, and then one day I was at the dentist and I just couldn't be in the chair. I had to get out of that room really fast. I had trouble breathing. And I've never had trouble with going to dentists before. Dentists were easy peasy for me. And here I am. Oh my goodness, I can't be in this room. I can't breathe.
Mm.
And so I stopped going to the dentist. And that was really strange for me, but I never put that down to COVID at the time, right? I just really didn't know what was happening. And then I injured my shoulder, had a fall and injured my shoulder, and I had to go in and have a go into the machine and have it scanned. I couldn't do that. And again, I was, when I'd been ill, I was in and out of those things a lot.
Mm.
And but this time, no, I had to press the buzzer, get me out of here. So suddenly I'm claustrophobic, do you know? And I still hadn't put it down to anything. I just really didn't understand. So those kind of things were there in the background.
Mm.
And then when I got COVID in August 2024, it was very mild, really mild. It was just like a cold. And but I went on to start developing all these symptoms, one after another, after another, after another.
Mm.
And then it made sense to me what was happening. Why? Because I started experiencing the air hunger. I
Yeah.
thought, oh, that's how it felt when I was in the dentist chair.
Oh, wow. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So really the first symptoms I had was the dizziness, the blood pooling, into my legs when as soon as I'd stand up.
Mm.
And that dizziness was so bad and lightheadedness, I couldn't lay down. I couldn't lay down to sleep. I had to sit up to
Yeah.
sleep for quite a while. And then oh yeah, just one after another, the symptoms just started to come.
Mm.
And I ended up with about 30 of them,
Oh
do you
my.
know, from yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but of course, by this stage, I thought, okay, I'll go down the medical model, check what's going on. But I already knew what was happening because I had a lot of clients with long COVID,
Right.
and I kind of knew what was going on from when it broke out.
Mm.
Okay, so I thought I'll just do my due diligence. I'll go to the cardiologist because I had terrible tachycardia. I had 3 visits to emergency because of this tachycardia. It was terrifying. My heart's just racing.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I went to the cardiologist, had all the tests done. Like everybody else, their tests come back normal, right?
Yeah.
All the tests, the blood tests, and you probably experience that as well. Everything
Yeah.
comes back
Totally.
normal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So I thought, okay, I don't think I'm going to get any help here. And plus, they kept telling me that I had anxiety, and I've never had a day of anxiety in my life.
Yeah.
Okay. And I remember saying to one of them, well, if it is anxiety, and I've never had anxiety before, can you tell me what's happening? Can you tell me why do I have this symptom of anxiety suddenly?
Yeah.
Oh, has anything been happening in your life that's causing? I said nothing more than what I've ever had before.
Yeah.
Why have I suddenly have anxiety out of the blue like this?
Mm.
And they didn't have any answers. They didn't have a clue.
Yeah. Gosh.
So
Honestly, the
I
story
thought,
is.
okay, I'll go back to all my things that I know. You
Yeah.
know, I've just 100% focus on my nervous system, mind body practices, exercises. I will support my body in every possible way I can with my diet, with boosting my immune system. So I went to a naturopath, got all the supplements. I used bioresonance previously when I was sick, so I went back to that, had that tested, and of course, Epstein Barr had gotten activated again.
Interesting.
Um, Herpes was activated again. My iron levels were really low.
Yeah.
All these things that other people have been saying that's
Yeah.
happening to them as well.
Mm.
And so that's where then it was good in a way because then I could focus my attention and really just concentrate on doing this.
Yeah.
And so every time I had a symptom, I was straight into safety messages to my brain,
Yeah.
safety messages to my brain, breathing, breathing, breathing,
Yeah.
and doing everything I possibly could to just get that nervous system humming along a bit better, doing yoga nidra every day, a couple of times a day, meditating, um, yeah, eating really well, taking supplements because my stomach was just awful.
Yeah.
I ended up just having to eat tiny small meals
Yeah.
because I just couldn't suddenly eat, couldn't drink alcohol. Not that I did before, rarely, but my son came home. He lives overseas, and whenever he's home, I have a little glass of whiskey with him before going to bed.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my goodness, I
Yeah.
can't drink this.
I know a lot of people say about the alcohol. Yeah.
Intolerance suddenly, right?
Yeah.
And the temperature regulation. Wow, I
Yeah.
thought I was back having menopause again. I've been over menopause years ago.
Yeah.
So Just
Wow.
very, very, but it just kind of shows you how much the nervous system impacts every system of your body. That became very clear to me because here's my immune system out of whack, my
Mhm.
hormonal system out of whack, my temperature regulation,
Yeah.
um, everything,
Yeah.
everything was not functioning well,
Yeah, it's interesting,
right?
isn't it? When you list all the symptoms, that the majority of the COVID symptoms, long COVID symptoms, do come under the autonomic nervous system function. So it makes
Yes,
sense that if there's
yes,
dysfunctional autonomic nervous system, then all of those systems will be affected, and you'll get those symptoms. So it's really
that's right.
obvious,
That's
isn't it,
right.
that a lot of the symptoms come under it.
And some people will have it, more severe than others. Some
Yeah,
people will have some and not others.
yeah,
So it's yeah, it was really, it felt good to be, instead of, going from here to here and trying this and trying that, I thought, no, I'm just going to focus my attention here.
yeah.
And that's what I did. So got my body stronger, got my mind strong. I did a lot of emotional work.
Yeah.
Um, because so I've trained with Dr. Schubiner and his team of neuroplastic doctors. So I did swaps with other practitioners and just dove a little bit deeper just to make sure if there was anything there that was that contributing to my nervous system
Mm.
being not so happy. So, I really, really did everything I could. And slowly, slowly the symptoms just started dropping away.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah.
That's so interesting to hear. So much information there. So, I mean, you were just so fortunate, weren't you, that you'd had all of that work previously and it worked for you previously, so you sort of knew straight away. And I think the problem a lot of people have now is that they don't have all this information. I mean, it is online now. There's a lot of stuff out there. But
Yes.
personally, when
Yes.
you're going through those symptoms, you think that there's something terribly, terribly wrong. Especially when you have the
Yes.
heart symptoms, we immediately jump to, oh my
Yes.
God, my heart. We've got massive problems with my heart. Am I going to have a heart attack or a stroke? So these are the
Yes.
thoughts that we're having that run around our head, when potentially, it could be autonomic nervous system related. We know that
Yes.
the autonomic nervous system does regulate how many times the heart beats and your blood pressure and your heart rate
Yes.
very
Yes.
sharply, and the neurological problems. So but I think we jump immediately to the worst case scenario because doctors don't really know how to help us yet. It feels like you're banging your head against a brick wall because there's nothing out there. But then when something like
Yes.
this comes along and works for you, and this definitely worked
Mm.
for me as well. It was something when you mentioned EFT, the tapping. I mean, that definitely
Yes.
worked for me, and it was something I'd never even
Yes.
thought of before. Um,
Right.
so that was incredible. And once things like that started working for me, I was more open-minded to the mind-body treatment
Yes.
and recovery
Yes.
from that. So
Yes.
how did you get into that to start with? What was your first experience of sort of the mind-body work?
I guess there was glimpses of it in that first period of illness. Some of
Mm,
the treatments that I used that had small increments of improvement.
mm,
They were mind body based,
mm.
right? So they weren't like what I know now, but
Yeah,
they were definitely, when I look back, it wasn't because I changed my diet.
yeah.
That that helped lower some inflammatory markers.
Mm,
It wasn't what are some of the other just body work, like going to Bowen therapy, having massages, acupuncture, even though acupuncture is kind of a little bit, it delves a little bit into mind body,
yeah.
but and maybe that's why I used to get some relief
Yeah.
from the pain. The pain would subside, you know, this much. So those were probably the earliest ones, and some breath work. I remember having some breath work experiences that really touched on what was happening in my body
Yeah.
and the emotions, that I was carrying.
Mm.
So that were all like little glimpses into it. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's why I, started delving more and more into that
Yeah.
once I got well.
Yeah.
But I was lucky, and and this is kind of why I want to share this with people to hopefully fast track them,
Mm.
I guess, on their journey I was lucky I already had a really good grounding and understood this mind body, and I've been working in it and seeing the results with clients.
Mm.
So there was no hesitation for me.
Yeah.
It worked for me before, it's going to work for me again. A lot of the symptoms overlapped what I had before.
Yeah.
So that's convinced me fairly quickly. I didn't go down that medical model for very long.
Yeah.
Just did my due diligence, had all the tests done. But
Yeah.
I jumped into this other work really quickly because I knew it worked before. So it's going
Yeah.
to work again.
Yeah.
And that's all I had to do is just keep focusing and
Yeah.
consistently just do the work, and I'm going to recover.
Yeah, that's so
So
interesting because I think, and you said exactly the right thing there about having the test done and they didn't find, things wrong medically, which is, I think, we need to emphasize that if you have got something wrong medically, then that's going on in the background. But this is for people who have had
absolutely.
medical tests, they've had the scans, they've had the blood tests, and they
Yes.
can't find anything wrong. So that's when we can then move into this method. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. But the interesting thing is that the first period of illness I had, I did have a lot of medical tests that
Yeah.
were all correct, right? You
Yeah.
don't get a diagnosis of lupus
Yeah,
without
that's
all
true.
the
Yeah.
tests,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I had the chronic pain I was due to have spinal surgery,
Yeah.
and I still haven't had that.
Wow.
So I did have all the physical
Yeah.
issues as well. I had all the tests
Yeah.
that ticked the box, but the nervous system work still, I
Wow.
still recovered doing the nervous system work. So I don't want people to lose hope that just because you do have some physical um, challenges, and you do have those test results that come back with whatever, issues with your blood, maybe, or um, I still think you can use the nervous system work
Yeah.
in conjunction with whatever you're doing.
Brilliant. Oh,
Okay.
thank you for clearing that up because I think people think
Hmm.
there's a,
It's got to be one
differentiation
or the
between
other.
them. Yeah, that's right.
No, it
Yeah.
doesn't have to. And the 14 years that I've been coaching, I've seen that over and over and over again. I've had so many clients with real physical issues.
Yeah.
Okay. Like they have to go and have their knee replaced because their knee is bone on bone.
Mm.
But they do this mind body work, there's no pain in their knee. So they're able to delay the knee operation.
Yeah.
Okay. That's just an example
Yeah.
of just so many things that they can be a physical issue, but also can be still mind body approach you can take.
Yeah, God, it's so interesting, isn't it? So, for somebody who was just at the beginning of their journey of this mind body work and just starting out, trying to see if it will work for them, what's a good place to start, and what can they, we know that our thoughts can sometimes
Yes.
perpetuate our
Yes.
symptoms and our condition. So, what would you advise someone to do who's just thinking about, okay, well, I'm open to this and I can start
Yes.
changing what I'm doing?
Yeah. I think start with the brain science,
Yeah.
the really basic understanding of the brain's danger response, the
Yeah.
alert response system. And once you have a good understanding of that, and you believe that possibly that's what's behind this problem that I have, then you can start um, looking into the therapies that support the brain science. So what I'm trained in is EAET, emotional expression and awareness therapy. So this process addresses mostly the unprocessed, the suppressed, the repressed emotions that we tend to have as human beings, whether it's anger, rage, sadness, grief, fears, that we just seem to not have a healthy relationship with. Okay. We haven't known how to process them. Nobody's actually taught us how to process them.
Yeah.
And these will all have an impact on the nervous system. And the science shows us that now. There's so much evidence to show that how our emotional health overlaps our physical health.
Yeah.
We know that so well now.
Mm.
And so look at processes that help with that. So PRT, pain reprocessing therapy, is the other one that I'm trained in. So pain reprocessing therapy also looks at somatic tracking, okay, looks at journaling, looks at again, emotional processing.
Yeah.
So these two are kind of like my main go-to
Yeah.
in helping the brain to work through any of the big emotional and traumatic experiences that we've had. And they also don't have to be big things. They can be like just recently some clients I've worked with, there was a constant feeling throughout their life growing up that they were emotionally neglected.
Mm.
Not just once or twice, but they could look back over their life and
Yeah.
just feel like their whole life they were emotionally neglected. There wasn't anybody there for them that they felt
Yeah.
safe with, that had their needs met.
Mm.
So this is a kind of trauma,
Yeah.
really, in the brain. Because if a small child is growing up feeling emotionally neglected, never having anybody to talk to be held by, to who heard them, who saw them, then that's going to be putting the brain into this alert danger response.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And eventually that's going to have an impact on their physical health, as this person had, a lot of physical issues.
Mm.
And so our nervous system and our brain are constantly working with each other, sending these signals, whether it's emotions, whether it's thoughts, whether it's our history, whether it's environmental, so if you've been exposed to chemicals or lime or mold, these things, that's also signaling danger in the brain.
Yeah.
Okay, so you work on those. And some people also, they feel really like a spiritual disconnect from themselves. They feel alone and lost and no sense of purpose.
Mm.
The brain can signal this as danger and
Yeah.
alert. Okay. If we have social disconnection, if we don't have a sense of belonging to a community and people around us to feel safe,
Yeah.
our brains primal brain. Our brain hasn't changed much since we were in the cave, our emotional brain. And so we're always needing that safety in numbers, safety with others. If I fall over and break my leg, I know somebody will find me and help me,
Yeah.
you know. So if we don't have that, and so many people are living alone and
Yeah.
disconnected from anyone. You know, I don't have any family, I don't have friends, I don't have community. Well, that's going to signal danger in the brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
So there's lots and lots of different ways, not just our thoughts.
Yeah,
There's various
it's
ways.
so interesting, isn't it? And I think looking back now, looking back to when I first had COVID and it turned into long COVID, I very much
Yeah.
felt like my whole system was broken down. Like it was like I don't know what one feels like, but it felt like a nervous breakdown. I felt like I
Oh,
couldn't think of anything. I couldn't make a decision. I couldn't think. I was just crying. And I'd never had
yeah.
experienced anxiety, like you said, never experienced
Yes.
anxiety before, never experienced anything like it. So I knew straight away that my nervous system was affected because it just felt like I was on the edge.
Yes.
And so it was quite easy for me to pinpoint, okay, there's something wrong with my nervous system here. But I think a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
with other symptoms can't pinpoint that straight away. So it's not as clear, is it? It's
Yes.
not as clear cut, even though that kind of work will help them because that kind of work
Yes.
definitely helped me build my nervous system.
Yeah. Yeah. I've worked with a lot of people with mold issue, you
Yeah,
know, and they've never thought to connect their nervous system to their mold issue.
yeah,
But
gosh,
absolutely it is. You know,
yeah,
if you've been living in a moldy environment, if you've been told you have mold
mm,
and you know in your brain that's causing your brain fog and those scary type things, well that's going to be signaling danger to your brain, isn't it?
yeah,
Okay. So there's 6 ways that the brain is signaling danger to us, and the brain is to for us to protect us
yeah,
and to predict what may be harmful for us.
mm,
So the ways it does it is, yes, our emotional health, you know, is that signaling danger to the brain? Am I always panic? Am I worrying all the time? Am I in overwhelm? Am I sending these dangerous emotional signals to my brain? That's one way. Okay, then we have the psychological is another way. If we've got psychological issues going on, like anxiety, or if we sad all the time, you know, these are going to be sending signals to the brain that I'm in danger, PTSD.
yeah,
Okay, and then we have the physical. So if you've had physical injuries,
mhm,
physical surgeries that may have not gone so well,
mm,
and that's not resolved, that's going to be signaling danger to the brain.
yeah,
Okay. And then we have the social and the spiritual. So there's these 6 different ways that the brain is constantly kind of watching out for. Are
yeah,
they safe here? Are they safe here? Are they safe here? Are they safe here? And then sending signals to the nervous system, fight or flight,
yeah,
or parasympathetic. You know, we fluctuating from one to the other. We're in sympathetic, parasympathetic constantly throughout the day. Like you look back to the, I mean, it's morning there for you. It's the end of the day for me. But if I look back through the day, there were several times when I was in and out of sympathetic and parasympathetic. You know,
mm,
I'd get a message and that my sympathetic might kick in a little bit and I'd regulate if it was too much, right?
yeah,
And there were periods of time where I experienced parasympathetic. I was relaxed, I was calm, I was feeling good, I was feeling peaceful, just checking in with myself. You know, one of my favorite tools is checking in with myself throughout the day.
yeah,
How am I going? How am I feeling?
mm,
What's happening for me? And now I'm hardly ever doing it because I don't have any more symptoms. But when I had symptoms constantly, I was in doing that exercise on a regular basis,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And helping my brain to process the emotions because, as Dr. Shubner says, usually we're in those five F's, you
Mm,
know, like for example, as soon as I woke up in the morning and my head's spinning,
mm,
I'm very quickly in fear,
yeah.
right? So I have to stop and bring myself out of that fear
Yeah.
really quickly, right? Noticing I'm in fear, bringing myself out of it. It might just be with a few breaths, or it might be, other tools that I would use.
Mhm.
Okay. And then I'd go to stand up, and the blood would just go to my legs, and my legs would feel like lead. You remember that?
Yeah.
Yes. And your arms, and
Mm,
you're kind of wading through this mud, to get to the kitchen to take your supplements. But immediately I'd stop
yeah.
and I would use a tool. I would breathe, I would calm, constantly sending safety messages to my brain, either through my breath or
Mm,
my self talk or, the various other tools and techniques that I had.
yeah.
Right. So that was my days were constantly doing that, stopping, regulating
Yeah.
throughout the day. So now I don't have to do that. I can just wake up, I can get out of bed, I can get on with my day, and
Yeah.
I don't have to do that. But I still choose to. I still choose to stop and just check in with myself
Yeah. Oh,
because I want my nervous system to just feel good. I like being in parasympathetic. I really like it.
yeah, and you can recognize it, can't you? Because looking
Yes.
back, I didn't really realize, I didn't know any of that stuff at the time, but I was doing that stuff because I recognized quite early on exactly what you just said there. Completely resonates with me and will resonate with a lot of people. In the morning, you wake up and you do a body scan and you think, what's wrong with me? How bad are my symptoms? And I had to change that narrative in
Yes.
my brain to not point out my symptoms in the morning. And so I then started doing my breathing, breath work, and meditations and affirmations in the morning to change my mindset
Yes.
for the day. And then during the
Right.
day, I could check in, realize that my sympathetic nervous system was activated. So I would take myself off and do some breath work and I could regulate that myself. But I didn't
Right.
realize what I was doing, but I was actually learned that
Okay.
I could regulate my own system. Because that high
Yes.
heart rate was coming, the tachycardia, and I could then go and
Yes.
regulate that by doing breathing. So
Yes.
I think it all ties in, doesn't it? If people can get a regular routine and start in the
Yes.
morning and be really conscious of regulating themselves and how they're feeling,
Yes.
and take
Yes.
that all the way through to the evening and have like some sort of routine, that's going to be really helpful for them, isn't it? We know the brain loves
Absolutely.
consistency, so anything that you can do regularly for yourself is going to be really helpful, isn't it?
Yes. I think we're not used to tuning into our bodies.
No.
You know, we spend most of our time in our head,
Mm,
right? So just even making that little shift to tuning in with the body
yeah.
and noticing what's happening in the body, but really important to have a safety signaling tool.
Yeah.
Because some people, if they just tune into their body, they're going to go into that fear. And
Yeah.
then the second one Dr. Shubner talks about is focus, you
Mm,
know, will be focused on. Because if I had done that with the dizziness, with the tachycardia, with the, all the other hundreds of symptoms, golly, I would have been really stuck.
yeah.
But if you can scan your body, get in touch with what's happening, and then bring the safety message in,
Mm,
okay, brain, there's nothing wrong with me. This is just my nervous system. I'm not in danger.
yeah.
Then we're retraining. Then we're rewiring the brain. Okay. So I want to just make that really clear to people. Don't just scan your body and stay there,
Yeah.
right? And don't scan your body and notice something and then go and fix it,
Yeah.
right? I have to fix this, I have to take this pill, I have to do this, I have to do that,
Mm.
right? And what's the other one? Fear, frustration. You know, when you feel, I don't know how many times I've felt incredibly frustrated
Yeah.
with what was happening to me.
Yeah.
Do you know, I couldn't sit and have a conversation with somebody without feeling that air hunger and needing to excuse myself so I could go and
Yeah.
breathe. Do you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Really frustrating.
Yeah.
So, but every time I felt that frustration, I released that emotion. I used a tool and released that emotion. I noticed where it was in my body, the frustration,
Yeah.
and then rewired. Right. So I was
Yeah.
constantly rewiring, constantly rewiring. So there's two ways you can do it. You can do that, set a timer, check in with yourself, and send the safety signals if you notice anything. Or what I did was I just did it when I had a symptom.
Right.
So as soon as I noticed a symptom, I would interrupt that signal to the brain very, very quickly,
Yeah.
interrupting, interrupting, interrupting. And I believe that that's why I think I recovered as quickly as I did,
Yeah.
because I was constantly interrupting that signal, danger signal from the brain to the nervous system.
Yeah.
It's okay. I'm okay. I'm okay.
Yeah.
Even when I landed in emergency a couple of times with the tachycardia,
Mm.
I was still constantly doing that in
Yeah.
the ambulance, in the hospital. I was still sending those signals to my brain. It's okay. It's okay. I know this is your heart's perfectly fine. This is just your nervous system. You're here just to check everything and so your family doesn't go crazy. You know?
That's
They're
such
like,
good
you have to go to
advice.
hospital.
No, it's such good advice because I think what happens is with the symptoms is they come in and they just create that fear straight away, don't they?
That's right.
Yeah.
Fear. And then we get focused. Do you remember ones where you just get really focused on it?
Yes, yes. And then it would make it worse, much worse, and it would get much bigger.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's
Yes.
really strange, isn't it? Because I was talking to someone the other day about how we were just talking about how you can do things that, that bring you joy throughout the day. And for me, it was puzzles when I had long COVID. My
Yes.
symptoms used to be really bad, but then I would do the puzzle, and for 20 minutes, I would forget all about my symptoms. And then as soon
That's
as I
right, because
finished
you're
the
not
puzzle,
focused on.
yes, and it's so
Yes,
fascinating
yes,
how the brain can switch it on and off. And I used to think then, well, how come, it was so bad then, but when I was doing the puzzle, I didn't even think about it. And then as soon
that's
as I
right.
finished the puzzle, I was back again with the
Yes,
symptoms. So
yes.
that's how I knew for me that it was probably to do with my, yeah,
Mind body,
nervous
right?
system.
I think
Definitely.
tinnitus was the one that really
Yes.
stood out for me.
Yeah.
Tinnitus, I would definitely notice, oh, Lolita, you're focused on that. Come on. And
Yeah.
I'd go straight to a somatic tracking exercise.
Yeah.
And then before I know it, oh, okay. That's gone now. Whenever it used to show up, I used to say to myself, "Oh, you're back again, Mr. Tinney. Okay, what are you trying to tell me here? Am I doing too much? Do I need to rest? What message are you trying to tell me?" And
Yeah.
then I'd go into the somatic tracking exercise, and before I know it, it was gone.
Yeah.
And it got less and less and less and less the less I focused on it,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
I made that decision. Do not focus on it because you've been to the audiologist, you've
Mm,
had all the tests done. There's absolutely nothing structurally wrong with your ear. It
mm,
must be nervous system.
yeah.
Focus on nervous system.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like my mindset and my approach and
Mm,
my way I am going to recover. I'm taking control of this.
yeah.
It when you start doing that, it gives you agency.
Yeah.
you're not so helpless.
Yeah, I
Do you
always
know?
say
You
that. It
can
gives you
take
sort of
the
control
reins.
back. Yeah, that's right. You can
Yes.
control your symptoms rather than they control you. And I always say that. It's so funny how this all it just resonates with my journey, and I hope it resonates with a lot of people out there as well, and that this can be really helpful for them. So I
And
know you're going to come.
everyone's nervous systems are different. Do you
Yeah.
know? And that's what we've got to remember. What I'm saying, what I do
Mm,
may not work for you because your nervous system is different. Do
mm,
you know those 14 years that I've been well, I've consistently been working on myself. I've
yeah.
done a lot of things over that period of time, as well as the time that I was unwell.
Mm,
And, I had a terrible history. I had a history of a lot of trauma.
yeah.
So I had a lot of work to do.
Mm,
And so you've got to think about that. You've got to think about people get really caught up in other people's stories and other people's difficulties. I see in the groups all the time, I have this and this and this and this, and they'll reel off all these symptoms.
mm,
Does anybody else have that?
mm,
Okay. So, yes, many, many will. But then what you've got to do is just look at your own self, look at your history, how you operate, what your personality trait is a big, big part of this. How do you emotionally regulate?
yeah.
So, how I emotionally regulate, my history, my personality might be totally different to yours, but I have all the same symptoms.
Mm,
Okay. So, my approach is going to be a little bit different to yours. You work with what works for you.
yeah.
Okay. But just stay focused on what what you want to do,
Mm.
and then just consistently keep doing that.
Yeah,
Yep.
perfect. That's great advice for people. And I know that you've agreed to actually come into the group and do a session for
Yes.
people on somatic tracking and helping people. And I know that's going to be just so helpful for people. And I think people who are just starting out in this journey with mind body work are going to find that absolutely fascinating.
I hope
Um,
so.
so
I
yeah, it's
hope
just
so.
this is just incredible, and the fact that you've been able to heal yourself after years and years of illness, and then with long COVID as well, and the fact that you help so
Yes.
many people is incredible. So you really are
And
amazing, Lolita. Really.
it's nice. I can say to myself now, okay, if you get sick again, you know what to do.
Yeah.
You know exactly what to do. So it
Yeah.
gives you a real sense of grounding and a knowing, that here I am, I've confirmed it again a second time, that I can get well using this same system, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, and it takes all of that
So,
fear out of it, doesn't it? Of catching COVID again and what will happen again when I get long COVID
yes,
again. If you can remove all of
yes,
that fear, and go into it with some strategies that you know are going to be helpful and that going to help
yes.
calm your system, then you start from a different place, don't you?
Mm, mm. And just really look after yourself well. Like I look back now and I go, yeah, Lolita, you probably were burning the candle at both ends a little bit too much before you got sick, and you're probably taking on a bit too much before you got sick. I was doing a lot of training as well as working and as well as a large family, big garden, big property. There's
Yeah,
probably a lot on my plate. So now I've kind of eased back a little bit from that
yeah.
as well as I move forward, and as I'm getting older as well. I'm like, yeah, you better slow down a little bit.
Makes a difference though, doesn't it? Incredible. Oh, your story is amazing, Lilish. It really is. And I know it's going to help so many people. So,
Hope it helps somebody. Yeah.
yeah.
Hope it can. I just had a young girl recently talking about fast tracking.
Mm,
She had been in and out of hospital. She had, like me, had POTS, had dysautonomia, all pretty much the same symptoms as I had.
Mm.
When she came to see me, she had her fan. So I know, okay, she's got a temperature regulation problem and she's
Yeah.
in her 20s,
Yeah.
right? So I know it's not menopause.
Yeah.
And she had to get somebody to drop her off to my office because she wasn't driving anymore. That's how ill she was. She stopped working. She
Yeah.
couldn't work anymore. And she was really, really unwell. She tried everything, been to all the doctors, did everything she could. And, I explained to her the danger response.
Yeah.
What I said to her, have you had any trauma, any like stressful events that have happened in your life
Mm.
before you got COVID? And also, how did you feel at the time you got COVID? Were you um, like a lot of people fighting this? Should I get the vaccination? Should I not? Do you know? And how did you feel about being in lockdown? And how were you, all your family and your friends? Did they have a lot of fear? What were you like during that period of time? So she told me like three big events that had happened in her life that were fairly traumatic. She'd had a loss, a grief
Yeah.
that she wasn't really able to process at the time because of COVID, and a couple of other things. And so I use this EAET process, which mostly it's emotional reprocessing, but it also addresses memory reconsolidation. Okay. So I got her to address those memories, release the emotions in those memories. The second time she came back to see me, no fan. She
Wow.
drove herself. She was looking at going back to work part time. Okay. So what's happened there? We
Yeah.
worked on one trauma and her danger response signals in her nervous system
Yeah.
settled down.
Yeah.
Okay. And her symptoms started getting less and less. Now she only had 3 appointments with me,
Mm.
3 sessions dealing with those traumatic events. She was back at work and no symptoms. And she still doesn't now,
Wow.
right? So some people, if they hone in on this danger signaling part of the brain,
Mm.
they can recover really quickly,
Yeah.
right? But others maybe not. She had done a lot of the other things. She'd taken the supplements, she'd changed her diet. She tried low-dose naltrexone. She had a really bad side effect. So she had tried quite a number of other things that people are doing out there.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not saying that everyone can recover that quickly, but it's another example of if you just go straight to those um, stressful
Mm.
events in your life and take those offline for the nervous system so it's not so much in sympathetic,
Yeah.
you can recover quite quickly.
Yeah. Gosh, that's fascinating, isn't it? It's fascinating
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
well, it gives people a lot to think about because I think, they'll all be thinking, how do I do this? And, is this what's wrong with my
Yes,
nervous system? So, it's great that you're going to come into the group and tell people more about it, and how people can help themselves as well, because I think it would be really helpful for people. But to
yeah,
just really, for the message out there really is for people to just become more aware, isn't it, of what's going on
yes,
with themselves and their bodies. And that the awareness
yes.
is really the first step, isn't it?
Mm,
Yeah.
mm. And getting some education,
Yeah.
getting that basic, brain science, how the brain is
Yeah.
doing this, keep protecting us and predicting danger for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Oh, thank you so
Mm.
much, Lisa. That's been
Oh,
absolutely fascinating. I know everyone will have enjoyed that as well. So we can't wait
thank
for you to come
you.
into the group. And we just really appreciate you coming and telling us your story and everything you do and how much you're helping people. And, it's just thank you so much for all the work that you're doing for everybody. It's been lovely
And
to meet you
thank
and have you here.
you for everything you're doing. You've given a platform, for people to come and share and find their tribe, find understanding and validation and acknowledgement, which is what we all crave, don't we, when we first get sick? There's
Yeah.
somebody else who gets us and doesn't think we're crazy,
Yeah, exactly. Oh no, thank you so
like
much.
all
It's
my
been
doctors.
yeah, it's been an absolute joy. Thank you so much, Alita.
Thank you, Donna.
Okay, bye
Take care.
bye.
Okay.